Hello and welcome to How to Deal with Grief and Trauma. My name is Natalie Himmelrich. Today on the podcast, I have the honor to be speaking with Turiya Hanover for the second time, revisiting her first year of grief over the loss of her partner Maia and the associated trauma. You might like to go and listen to her first episode in season 1. Turiya and I share passion, befriending death. Not everyone's cup of tea in terms of passions, but you will enjoy listening to this episode if you're truly interested in looking behind the veils of life, birth, death, and everything in between. Turiya says,
and we don't know what happens after death. We have no idea. There might as well be around in some form or the other. I can feel Maia so close often, just like as she was then, just the same energy and same kind of, very upright and very there, but there. So I don't know, is it true? Is it my mind that wants to overcome the loss? I take it for what it is and let it be.
About this week's guest, Turiya is the co-founder of Path Retreats and the transformational process Path of Love with Rafia Morgan. Together they also lead a 1-year holistic counselor training for therapists called Working with People, School of Counselling. She has been trained in many different modalities such as Gestalt, bioenergetics, psychodrama, family therapy, NLP, hypnosis, somatic experiencing, ego psychology, family constellation, Enneagram and astrology, and essence work. Turiya's personal journey into human development started when she did her first 2-year Jungian psychotherapy course, age 22, followed by an encounter workshop in the 1970s in Germany. The revelation and exploration of this humanistic psychology approach took Turiya by surprise. The internal shift that she's experienced was so profound that she and her husband set on a new course of human discovery, which led them to India. Through learning meditation, living and working in community under the guidance of a master, she developed a unique approach in working with people that is a synthesis of Eastern insights, living awareness, and a Western approach to humanistic psychology. The sudden and unexpected death of her husband marked a turning point in Turiya's life. This profound experience deeply influenced her own personal search and how she works with people today. Today, Turiya has the joy of being a grandmother and spends her free time painting, and she's writing a book about the rising of the feminine and about death as a friend and the realization of impermanence. Just a note on the sound quality of this episode. Given I recorded this during my sabbatical in South Africa with a different microphone than usual, the sound quality is slightly different, so thank you for understanding, and I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. So welcome Turiya, it's so nice to see you again, and I'm looking forward to the second conversation with you. How are you today?
I'm doing very well today. I'm really, really good. It's quite cold here on Mallorca, but also beautiful.
Mm. So we have had Turiya in season 1 as a guest. So for anyone listening, if you haven't listened to Turiya's first episode, I highly recommend you go back and listen to that episode where she talks about the losses in her life and gives a bit of background and history. But today, it's coming up to the first year anniversary of the loss of Maia, your partner, and it's December as of recording this. And so I just wanted to find out from you, given that this is the time of the anniversary and the remembrance of that day, and also, we always talk about the first year of grief. How is that for you in this season, in this cycle currently?
Well, I mean, it's two things, it's like in one way I feel more in myself and more grounded, and I'm much easier. The grief is not so intense anymore, and I'm of course grateful for that. I feel I'm more stepped into my life. I feel I have more life energy again, juice. And the first few months I thought I wanted to disappear as well, and that has really shifted. And maybe the last 2 months only, not that long ago, where I really feel like it's like life kicked in and like saying, hey, you have to move on with my life. And on the other hand, of course, Maia and I have almost the same birthday, and of course that brings it up. And then people want to celebrate and go out and la 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 la, and I'm completely not up for that,
Yeah.
So it's just like that, And of course, most people have forgotten, but I don't forget, So it's just like that. So those dates are often create that pain, the loss.
Yeah, you mentioned to me that your birthday was just one day apart, and
yeah,
for you that's very present, and those people that are around you are probably remembering your birthday, but not necessarily hers.
Yeah.
How did you celebrate her birthday and your birthday this year, given it's the first time without her?
Well, mostly I'd celebrate my birthday I talked with lots of people I connected with, and I allowed myself to receive a lot of love, and that was wonderful, But I was also happy to be alone for the rest of the day. If one thing I really learned through this loss is to be alone. That's one of the big things that I really discover, that actually aloneness is a beautiful state of being. And I have not ever really experienced that, mostly in relationships. I have mostly lived in relationships. I have never really felt my aloneness, or that it's okay to go alone for a walk, or that it's okay to spend home alone. I actually enjoy being alone. And that's the big difference to the loss of my husband many years ago. Because then we were living in the commune. It was very held in the commune. There were lots of people around all the time. So my sense of aloneness was completely not there. Now I'm also at an age where aloneness is much more significant. In one way, I'm not alone because I have a lot of really, really good friends, very valuable and very, very loving and deep friends. I'm very held by a lot of love and a lot of care and a lot of just like that. And then on the other hand, I feel like I have to find that place of aloneness inside of myself. Otherwise, I won't be able to ever really connect with somebody else. I can't, because I'll be too much caught by my fear, or my fear of abandonment. Yeah, that is still with me very, very strongly, is that feeling if I would ever open up to somebody really on a more intimate level, let's call it, that fear of abandonment is so strong. And that's what I'm dealing with right now, to really look, where does that come from? And of course, it's an old story. It's not just now, it happened before, and how to be with that, and how to not live it out through another relationship.
I mean, it happened multiple times. You were just referring back to your husband 40 years ago,
Yeah.
And then now you're in a different life cycle as well. To losing someone in your 70s is a completely different experience. Do you want to talk a little bit about that for people to get a glimpse into what it is for you right now, even the stage that you are in?
Well, I mean, aging is, of course, another big challenge. Yeah, it's like when I just got 74. It's like you don't jump into the next story just like that. You don't. I'm not even interested. It's like I lived a very full life. So now my life is much more oriented towards my inner space, and being able to, in a way, it's a time to prepare for death also, and looking at how will I die. If I have the opportunity to even to be in a present state, but how will I live my life? And that the key to aloneness is so essential. Alone but not isolated. Many people, when they get older, they are alone, but they're isolated. And they're kind of they feel that pain of isolation. But how can I be alone and still connected to other people, to friends, to nature, to beauty, to life? and that for me is the real challenge right now. Of course, then you think, oh my God, I'm old, I'm never going to have another partnership, or, the mind goes like that. But inside of myself, I don't think I ever been really in a good, grounded, open aloneness like I have now. Because I lived so long in the commune, I'm always surrounded by people, either by people or I always am in a relationship. Yeah. I mean, I have been alone a few years in between, but not really alone. And so this is, I feel if we could just in age value aloneness, and then also value a different kind of togetherness that comes from aloneness and not from the fear of isolation.
I think there's a lot of confusion or questions around the difference between aloneness, being alone, feeling lonely. And I mean, these topics are somehow related, but not the same. So, I mean, people who have experienced loss of a partner, they have to suddenly live without that partner if it's a sudden loss. And I think that's the part that makes a big difference in one's life when you're used to being with someone on a day-to-day basis. Like, I mean, for me currently, I'm here in South Africa without my partner, and I've chosen that to be conscious separation, not in terms of relationship, but in terms of space and time. But still, it makes you think, okay, who am I without that person there all the time? What is the difference for you between lonely, aloneness, the aloneness inside of you?
Well, of course, there's one thing is to be really in an intimacy with a human being that you cannot replace. I can't just say, okay, I can replace Maia or my husband. You can't. It's impossible. Even though you would want to, even you try to, even you fantasize, maybe whatever, but it's just not possible. And that in itself is a huge, huge loss. And that's not, for a while I thought I'll never overcome this, because I'll never find somebody who will be even close to that experience that we had together. It's just not possible. And then, of course, that creates a certain isolation. And then whoever you meet, then you compare, and it doesn't work out, So then you go into a certain isolation that is a bit like, okay, that's how it is. And that I think is always, and of course, to a certain extent, I know that loneliness out of my childhood. I think we all know that loneliness out of our childhood. I had to fit into a family environment that was not appreciative of who I am. I think we all know that inner isolation, to be lonely, that lonely little kid that feels like nobody cares if I'm here or not here, So, and then once I move through that, and really, and it's a big issue, really, that aloneness, loneliness, but once I can move through it, then I come to a really, an aloneness that is inclusive, but not exclusive.
Yeah, I think that's a good
it's inclusive of my family, of my daughter, of my grandsons, who I love really dearly, and my friends, and it includes, and I can also let their love in, even though it's never going to be the same love, but I can let that love in and be nourished by it. But if I go to memory lane, I go like, yeah, it's never going to be the same love, and I'm down into the downward spiral of loneliness and. But I think it's good to make the distinction between those two, and then aging comes on top of it, because I don't have that much of interest in. I've done so much. I've been in so many, relationships and situations. I'm also satisfied on many, many levels. Yeah. So what is there left over? What's essential for me in my life? And that's the big question we have to ask ourselves after every death. What is really essential for you in my life? Given that death shows me my impermanence and the impermanence, given that that's a fact. You can't help it anymore. I can't look at a situation without being reminded of that. And how can I love and include the sense of impermanency? Include the acknowledgement of the temporariness of the love.
Yeah.
And that's an enormous challenge. I often try to include instead of exclude, and it's quite something. I don't think I could be close to somebody at this point. It's too close to the memory and to the loss and to the grieving. I can't. But maybe one day I will be able to. I don't know. That's a big undertaking. Can I love somebody and include that this is a temporary situation? Eventually you will die, or I will die, or we will separate, whatever,
And I think impermanence in hindsight of how you lost Maia also shows up in ways that we don't expect it. I mean, most of us expect to die at some stage. When in the younger years we sort of believe that we are invincible and we live, but also a sudden death shows us that it's not a given. The only promise that we're given at the birth, is death. It comes in ways that we don't even consider possible until they happen. I mean, I recall so many people that I spoke to through the podcast series so far that I think, there's so many different ways in which this impermanence can show up in our lives that make us understand it's not necessarily the way you expect it to be, dying at old age and falling asleep, not waking up. I don't know how the percentage would be in question of how many people die in the way that they wish they would die.
Yeah, and I mean that the reality of impermanence only shows once we really allow that impermanence to be there, then most of our life we're trying to create safety. We just do the opposite because we are counteracting the reality of impermanence. So more safety, a house, a car, children, a job, everything. We're trying to defy the impermanence. Unconsciously, because we want to feel safe. We want to know it's okay to be here, and I want to feel safe, and I want to love without thinking about tomorrow. So, and of course that is the other end of the story. And then something happens. It's not even losing a loved one, but you lose your job. So many moments happen where impermanence is in our face, where you just see it, or you look at the war in Ukraine, you can see it, people losing their homes, losing everything. And it is there. We know it. We all come out of the Second World War. Our parents, grandparents got completely destroyed, but we pretend, we don't know about it.
Even the most recent world event of COVID, of the pandemic, sort of the impermanence of the ideas that we had around being mobile or being able to do things, it was taken away. And how fast we come back to a certain kind of normalcy around that. And now people are traveling again and doing the things that they couldn't before. And I think, we're talking about impermanence through death, but there's also other ways in which people have experienced a lot of loss of personal freedom, of ability to do and be the way that they wanted to do. Even inflation in countries like South Africa, as an example, has incapacitated certain people to be and do what they want to be and do.
But I mean, I think that the whole, what I feel is we are really a death-denying culture. Our culture doesn't want to know about death. We do everything to avoid death. We don't, even the way how we do funerals, it's always like, yeah, it's a dark, heavy affair, but we avoid that death is part of our life. It is part of who we are, and just to always keep that part of what we do and how we're here. It is a reality, we come, we go. And I think if we could just include that and make death more like a friend, or have a culture that welcomes death, where somebody dies at home and the whole family is around, and then you die, and the kids can sit with you or not, or whatever happens, yeah. But everything is separate around death, we put people in homes, we put them away in hospital, we don't want to look at it, we don't want to deal with it. And I think that's part of our culture, we don't deal well with death. We pretend it doesn't happen, and then all the death prolonging things that we do, and it's not we don't work on it. It's part of our life.
Why do you think that has come to this, that society's grief, denying?
Well, I don't know where it comes from, but I certainly know we are in that space, We don't really, I think we go a bit megalomaniac with our technical inventions. And of course, we did. I mean, the technology, I mean, we do some amazing things. When you look at airplanes or people going up to the moon, or so many amazing things also happen, where humans are defying the limitations of our existence. Yeah, who would have thought 50 or 100 years ago that we could fly to Australia in 20 hours? Nobody, So there's also this, we are challenged with limitation and we overcome them, but death it's always there, we cannot. So, and that I think is the big, I don't know, I wish death would be more part of our lives.
Well, that's definitely the part that people are faced with in terms of their surrounding being uncomfortable or unaccustomed to how to be with a bereaved person. How was it in your circle, with your surroundings? How did they approach you within the first year? Like one of the things that I mentioned to you before is that a lot of clients share with me that at some stage within the first year, after the funeral has happened, after the big things have happened, sort of it becomes quiet and people don't mention it anymore, not to bring it up, not to make you feel sad, in a way to avoid it, to avoid the feelings that go with it, and certain things might become too much. But how did your surroundings deal with you within the first year? How did they approach it, the topic?
Well, it's a bit like that. People are there with you in the beginning when it's very, very fresh and new. And then eventually people also forget. It's not in their reality.
Exactly.
They forget. It's not ill meaning. They just forget. And then you're on your own. But that's where, where then that aloneness comes in, that actually is very, very valuable, It is just like that. Yeah. And why not take that and just say, okay, that's how it is, And step by step, the first year for me in this case was also overcoming the trauma. Honestly, it took me about 6-7 months to come out of the freaked outness and shock of that thing, And then you enter a much deeper level of loss and feelings, much, much deeper. But it took me at least 6-7 months to even feel, you're frozen. It's like, too much for my system to digest. It's like, what happened?
Yeah.
And that in itself is another rhythm that we have to also acknowledge, And I'm sure it's like that with many people.
Yeah. There's a different level of reality that kicks in once that first numbness, even though you're functioning and you're doing all these things, once that sort of comes up, you come up into a deeper reality and realization of the death and the reality of it, the reality of the impermanence.
Yeah, and of the loss and of the grieving, of the letting go, that all starts on a much deeper level, and of course nobody really understands it. I wish, people would talk more about that, what happens actually after you lose somebody that is so close to you, because I'm sure many people go through it and then wonder why after half a year you actually have many more feelings, a much deeper level of sadness and of also outrage sometimes show up, anger, and why did this happen to me, and all these things. But we don't talk about those things, it's not included in our life. Yeah, we talk about how to be happy and how to stay young and how to stay young longer and all these kind of things, but we don't talk about what happens with the impermanence of our lives, even though it's really so much in our face. Yeah, you go outside, it's autumn, the leaves are falling, we're completely, it's not happening to me.
I mean, that's why I love having these conversations, to bring to light those situations and those experiences that are often lived behind closed doors. And because people are challenged to deal with or to meet someone that is in the face of the deep grief or anger or outrage or questioning, why me, why did this happen? And they sort of suffocate it down with, well, at least, or you'll find someone else, or whatever the sentences is to cover up the actual despair that is here. And I think for me it's important to have this conversation, to bring more people to the awareness of this is normal. Like I was sharing with you, I was editing a podcast of a woman that shared her story, and it's like the kind of stuff that movies are made out of. But there's lots of people who deal with losses like yours, like multiple losses in lives shortly after one another, and they are around us. They are everywhere, and they might not be able to show what they're feeling truly because it's not spoken about.
Yeah, it's just like that. I mean, you should invite him. You know Stephen Jenkins, that Canadian guy who's called the Death Walker? You have to, and he's a wonderful, wonderful guy who worked with many, many people who have been dying, a doctor. And one of his things that I really took for myself and I love so much is like, grief is a way of loving that which has slipped away from view. And I love that, to give grief a completely different meaning. When you grieve, you love the one that has slipped away. And that I say it very often to myself in the morning when I wake up. It's just to that grief is not just something terrible and you try to get over it, but it is something beautiful also. In your tears, you honor that person that you love so deeply. And it filled my heart with preciousness, and validation and love. Yeah. So it's not like it's terrible that you're grieving, but it's a way of loving that which has slipped away. What I think is so beautiful, it has slipped away. It's just suddenly they're gone. Yeah. It's a wonderful thing, and I think that's really, if we could just include all that into our lives, we'll be so much more richer, and it's not just like when you're grieving, people don't know what to do with you, and why? It's part of who we are, it's part of our life. It's also a part of the beauty of our life. And we all know, we all have experiences of it, everybody, even if you didn't lose somebody. We know what it means to lose somebody, you know.
Yeah, definitely. And if we haven't, and if there's anyone who hasn't, absolutely sure that that is part of life. That I think Robert Downey Jr. says, we who grieve are good for you because we give you the preparation for what you are to meet one day. Something like that. It's the quote, not verbatim, but it's, as you were saying, it's normal. It's something that we are used to, and grief is not the problem. Or the expressions of grief, they are not the problem. It's the idea of that sadness being too much or not good, or that person shouldn't be feeling that. Because as you were saying, I mean, tears are the pearls of love that you have for that person.
Yeah. I love that. Oh, tears are the pearls of love. It's such a beautiful way to say it, you know. Or in the Hindu, they say that with the tears you clean the stairs to the temple.
Nice.
Your inner temple, you know. I think that is so beautiful, yeah. And tears have such a wonderful meaning also, you know. They clean the heart of all the stuff that we're holding back there. It's such a beautiful state of being, you know. Often when I miss Maia or I cry deeply, I often feel her so close. You know, she's anyway often close with me. It's almost like a guide that I can, you know, suddenly there it is. I like, okay, yeah, okay, you know, and it fills me with a bigger love, you know, than with a you me love. You know, it's wonderful also, but the heart has to go through those feelings. There's nothing wrong with them, you know.
If it was more in people's minds and understanding of integrating grief and loss into our lives, how would it enable them to be better in support of someone like you? What would you think it would enable them to be or do or have? Or what would you wish they would have or be able to do?
Well, that is not such a separate event. You know, that is an event that is part of birth and death. They come together, you know. One is as precious as the other one. You know, with birth, we're like, yeah, big and blah, 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 and a new life is born. But at the same time, the mystery of life is also, and suddenly it's gone. Just like that. You know, you look and suddenly it's gone. The person was before talking to you and suddenly it's gone. It's also an unbelievable mystery of this life. We don't know nothing. Nothing, you know. We try, but I feel like in the face of that, you can only be on your knees, really, and say, wow. Wow.
And that is, I mean, for me, when you talk about that, the experience that comes to mind is the closeness of birth and death of my younger daughter, where I was really feeling the honor when I was holding her at the door when she slipped away. And I can so clearly remember I felt this honor of being able to, just the same way as I birthed her, to be present at that moment. And because it was very conscious in the sense that we took her off the life support. It was very conscious death in the sense, but to be able to hold her, that I felt such an honor, and at the same time my human heart felt such loss for not being able to continue life with her, which I knew, but at the same time this honor that I felt to be able to be at that moment. And actually my daughter this morning, she just asked the question, she said, if you could pay any sum of money for Maia to come back, would you pay it? And I said, yes. And she said, what would you do if you didn't have the money? Sort of really practical, right? And I thought, yeah, good question. Yeah.
But it's so wonderful. It's like we talk about things instead of it's over. Let's just let it be. Yeah. Even to being able to relate to that, and just like, yeah, that is the mystery of this life, you know. And how do we come to terms with that? And I'm always in awe of what this life is really presenting us with, and also in awe of how we try to pretend that we don't look at it. You know, we pretend we're some megalomaniac, know-it-all, you know, God knows what. And we're like, hey, it's so much here. You know?
No, I know what I wish in terms of people's ability to be with grief and loss. And one of the things that I seem to have to somehow fight again and again is my daughter's situation with her surroundings, in terms of what they tell her she should say and whatnot. Like in her case, she always talks about her sister Maia, her twin sister, but she also talks about her other two siblings, the babies that I miscarried. Now, personally, I don't speak about those, but for her, they're just as important, because she said, I so want to have a sibling. They're all my siblings. So when someone asks, do you have any siblings? She usually talks about all her siblings. And in school, for example, people have said, she shouldn't just lead any first conversation with her dead sister. And I'm like, why not? What's wrong with that? That's her identity. I mean, if people ask you, do you have a mother? No, because she died. I don't have her anymore. And for me, that's one thing that I just wish, let them just be with what they need to be. I mean, for her, they all count. It's important to her, and it will develop. At a certain age, she maybe won't speak about all of them, and she will make a different decision. But that I wish for people to just say, okay, well, this is the person's story, just like Dinner for One. I mean, everyone knows Dinner for One, right? The story where this woman, it's usually shown around Christmas. I don't know if you know, it's like a skit where one person, so this woman lost her husband, and it's at a table, and then he puts the placemats and everything for all these people who died, and the butler comes in, and the butler always has to drink for all these other people, and the butler gets really drunk and falls over the rug and stuff. It's really funny, but it's like, well, that's her story. That's what's important to her. So yeah, that would be my wish, for people to say, okay, well, let's see how someone shows up, and if they need to talk about the person that they lost 20 years ago, that's part of who they are right now.
And we don't know what happens after death. We have no idea, you know, and they might as well be around in some form or the other. You know, I can feel Maia so close often, just like as she was then, just the same energy and same kind of, you know, very upright and very there, but there. So I don't know, is it true? Is it my mind that wants to overcome the loss? I take it for what it is and let it be. The truth is, we don't know. We don't really know what happens after we die. We have no idea, you know. We really don't know. All I want is if I can prepare myself for dying so that I can let go of the physical form. Maybe it's not in pain, maybe in pain, and be able to face and be present enough to more than my body. You know, and that's that's why I meditate, or that's why I wake up in the morning and say, this is impermanent. Today I'm here. I don't know if I'm here tomorrow. That's the truth. You know, and every day is like that, every moment. So I'm here now. Maybe not later, you know, and to have that it also is a certain brings a wake up into life. Yeah.
It reminds me of a story of someone who said, like, if you have an argument with someone and you don't resolve it, why is that? Because there is the belief or the expectation that they come back and you can resolve it. That's already going to be resolved at some stage. And to live a little bit more with that impermanence would mean, what if I wasn't so sure, or would pretend less that this is so safe? What would I do then? And that would probably lead to clarify and make up or make do with someone much earlier on than wait for the next time because you're so sure that they're coming back. Yeah, and the presence that you spoke about with Maia, you know, the picture that always is in my mind is as if we are just on one side of a page and they are on the other side.
Exactly like page. That. Yeah.
And we can't see through the page, but they're just here, not there, here.
Yeah, I feel it just like that. And of course, not all the time, because I also do my life, I forget, you know. But when I'm aware with it, it's always just so present and so there, you know, and so much like, it's like a guidance for my life, you know, where I sometimes ask questions also and try to reflect whatever I'm reflecting on, you know, and look at it. Yeah, it's so wonderful for me. I think it's so wonderful. Of course, you can say maybe it's just my inability to let go. I don't know, whatever you want, but I trust this. It's precious to me. So, and if people think it's weird, then I don't talk about it. I don't mind. You know.
So to end this for today, what would you wish for yourself and for the people around you in regards to this first year coming to the anniversary of Maia's death? How are you gonna mark that day for yourself? Do you have any ideas or any plans so far?
No, I usually stay quiet, go out for a walk, and you know, be in contact. No, not like any other day. Probably it will come up. The trauma usually comes up, and the memory, of course, brings that up also, you know. So usually I go through some painful moments, but it's also okay, you know. It is okay. I accepted it as an opening to a deeper place inside of myself, you know. But in all, it has given me so much. I mean, my first feeling is really of gratitude, you know, to life, to love, that I even was able to experience something like that I can experience this right now, you know. Yeah. This is obviously exactly what I needed. Yeah, so I take it like that also. And always this, you know, grief is a way of loving that which has slipped away from you. It's just that it's a way of loving. Yeah. And then, of course, on a bigger thing, I reflect on my fear of abandonment. You know, that's an old story. And how can I really, how can I look at what's really underneath that? Mm.
Well, thank you so much. I think there's more for us to delve into in terms of the befriending of death. That stays with me even after the first conversation we had. I remember that, and so thank you so much for today's conversation. And
yeah, it's always wonderful talking to you because you come from a very deep place, and I know you know what I'm talking about, and that is that is such a beautiful landing ground, you know, to know somebody is that wide in their inner understanding and feelings also. That is really an amazing appreciation for who you are and who we are together, and what we can create together also. Yeah. So, death as a friend.
Thank you, Turiya. The appreciation is on my side.
Much love, hey, and enjoy South Africa. I love it there.
Thanks for listening to How to Deal with Grief and Trauma. If you'd like to be updated on future episodes, please subscribe to my newsletter on nataliehimmelrich.com. If you need grief support, please contact me for a 30 minutes free discovery session. How to Deal with Grief and Trauma is produced and edited by me, Natalie Himmelrich. To support this podcast, please rate, review, and subscribe to or follow the podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you. And remember to keep breathing. I promise it will get easier.